It started with a vision for how the internet should work, how it could work.
It really should be possible for anyone to just kind of wave their hand and carve out a piece of cyberspace and create a world of their own.
But the technology to achieve such a vision simply did not exist.
There's no way that you can have really high throughput and also have all these security and fairness properties. I was able to convince myself it's not possible. And I set it aside, and it would come back and haunt me, and it would keep nagging at me. And so I would pick it up again and set it aside again. And this kept going for years.
3 years later, Lehman had a breakthrough, the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. In 2015, Manson Lehman founded Swirlds to battle test the algorithm in private permissioned environments. And the following year, Lehman published a technical paper. But in order to realize the vision of a fairer, more secure digital future for all, the world needed a trust layer, a public ledger built on Hashgraph.
Okay, it looks like we are down to the final seconds here.
3, 2, 1. Open access.
The network is open. As of this moment, we have council member nodes online, ready to take transactions from anyone, anywhere in the world.
Since open access, Hedera has witnessed exponential growth on the network, with billions of real-world transactions, hundreds of applications, and tens of thousands of ecosystem developers. The Hedera Council has gone from strength to strength, growing to 29 members on 6 continents, stewarding the network responsibly and ensuring its longevity for generations to come. Hello, future.
Hello, Hedera community, and hello, future. Welcome to the October 2024 community call. Thank you all for being here today. Today we have a very exciting call and array of speakers, and we will be talking about Hiero. This is the new project under the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, and this is the project that has originated from Hedera donating its entire code base to the Linux Foundation. So we will be talking about what this means for the community, what this means for Hedera, and how you can contribute to Hedera and Hiero moving forward. And we'll also be talking about new incentive programs that are live on Hedera for the community to take a part of, whether you're technical or not. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. So this is a live stream. It's currently being streamed to both X and YouTube, and we can see your questions in the comments. So if you have a comment for the speakers, please feel free to ask, and they will get to the questions if they want to. And so let's get started with a bit of introductions. I'll introduce myself. I'll be your host today. My name is Mika. I'm the community development rep for Hedera at Hashgraph. And today we have 3 amazing speakers that have joined us. So we have Richard Bair, who is the VP of engineering at Hedera and Hashgraph. We have Samson Goddy, who is the open source program manager at Hedera. And we have Matt, who is the head of content at Thrive, and they all have very interesting presentations for us. And so we'll get started with Richard. So Richard, I'm so glad you could join us. Good to see you here. Welcome to the stage. So you'll be going up first. I don't know if you're prepared for this since you literally just joined, but would you be so kind to tell us about Hiero? What does it mean for Hedera to have donated its code base to the Linux Foundation? What is Hiero? Can you give us a high-level overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry to make you sweat there, Mika. One of the things that we're doing is hiring a lot, and I was in an interview, so I apologize. As many of you know, we've had all of the code for Hedera has been open source for at least the last 2 years in GitHub, Apache 2 licensed, everything else. But open source is a lot more than just a license on your source code. Like when we think about open source, what we're really thinking about is also open governance. and in particularly having a vendor-neutral governance structure. And so there was a long conversation that we had actually going back several years with Hedera, where we were working out how are we going to set up the independent governance structure for this for Hiero. And we well, of course, we didn't have a name for it at the time, but for our open source work, how are we going to govern it? We could do something sort of ad hoc, have our own foundation that was responsible for governing this thing. We could join an existing foundation, and we decided that joining an existing foundation was going to be much more beneficial. So a lot of reasons for that. But even some of them are just sort of mechanical or practical. If you were to go to any sort of, I used to work at Oracle. At Oracle, we had an open source program office. If you, as a line of business, as an engineer down on some leaf node in the organization, I wanted to go contribute to some open source project, I actually have to go get approval from this open source office. And to get approval from the open source office, I have to have some justification for it, and then I have to tell them who's running the project and all this other kind of stuff. Whereas if I were to say, hey, yeah, I want to contribute to this project and it's part of the Linux Foundation, then they're like, oh, great, we're members of the Linux Foundation, knock yourself out. So being able to join an existing foundation like the Linux Foundation is really important. It opens up a lot of doors for people. It also kind of really asserts the fact that we're trying to do this the right way. Organizations like Linux Foundation are going to make sure that we are a healthy open source project, that we truly are vendor neutral. And we went to great lengths, even in like our charter, to try to limit the number of number of representatives in our technical steering committee that could come from the same company, to make sure that it was spread out across multiple people. So I think the biggest advantage, there's two real big reasons why donating our source code to the Linux Foundation is important. The first one is that it's a strong signal to everybody that we are doing vendor neutral open source development the way that it's meant to be done. And the second reason is that it opens a lot of doors with other organizations or individuals who know or trust the Linux Foundation and are now interested in approaching us about opportunities and ways that we can work together. I think that's, do you want me to just riff for a long time, Mika, or do you have follow-up questions?
That's perfect. Yeah, that's a great explanation. Thank you. So what does this actually change for Hedera itself in terms of the employees or like the developers, engineers at Hedera, and also the Hedera community? What does that change for them?
So in some ways, it doesn't change much because we already were on GitHub and doing issues and everything else. But in other ways, it changes things fundamentally because while the mechanics of an engineer's day, for example, is going to be the same, you create pull requests, you file issues, you get reviews on those pull requests and whatnot. The big difference is that moving towards an open development model where, for example, the community calls that are around the development process are all open. Like actually having that set up. The technical steering committee is an open event. Like you can go look at the Linux Foundation's calendar and you can find these Zoom meetings and you can join them and sort of be there as we are going through all the details on running the organization. So in some ways, it's sort of fundamentally different in terms of giving insight into the day-to-day work. In other ways, it's not much of a change because we were already doing open source code development before.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned the technical steering committee, and some people might not know what that is. So can you tell us about the technical steering committee and the governing council and TechCom and their roles now and how they're going to be working together moving forward?
Right. Yeah. So that's a great question. So when we think about Hiero and we think about open governance and vendor neutrality, we think of Hedera as being a vendor, even though it's made up of many multinationals. Think of Hedera as a vendor. Think of Hashgraph as a vendor. Think of any of the other community members as being vendors as well. We all have an equal playing field in which we're working on the development of the source code. So inside this, inside of Hiero, there are many repositories, and we're working really hard. If you were there at our TSC committee meeting this morning, you'd know where we are on the progress. But we're we're working hard on getting all the provenance and stuff for all the source code worked out so that we can physically move it into the Hiero project. But there's many repos. There's consensus nodes and the mirror nodes and the JSON RPC relays and the mirror node explorers and all the SDKs and everything else. So there's all these different repos. There's all these different maintainers who are maintaining those. But some group has to be responsible for coordination across all of those repositories. Some group needs to be able to guide, like for example, when we have a HIP that we want to implement, that HIP is going to touch the SDKs, it's going to touch the mirror node, it's going to touch the consensus node and the mirror node explorer, and there's a lot of things that are going to be impacted by it. So there has to be kind of a larger group that's coordinating activities across all these different repositories. That's what the technical steering committee is. The technical steering committee is also fundamentally responsible for the overall project, like we voted on the name and what repo we're going to put things, what organization to use on GitHub and that kind of stuff. We're also responsible for voting on which projects we allow join Hiero and which don't. So if you have an independent project that wasn't part of, what Hashgraph or Swirlds Labs or Hedera was building before, and you wanted to contribute to it, then you would bring your project to the technical steering committee where we could review it and say, does this, fit the charter? Does this meet the requirements of the charter? Does it fit in our community? If it does, then we would welcome them in. And the technical steering committee is made up of 9 individuals, and no more than 2 of those individuals can come from the same company. And there's actually 3 spots that are still to be filled that we're establishing. That the existing TSC is establishing the rules by which the votes can be handled, the process for doing the voting and collecting the voting and determining votes to fill those remaining 3 positions. And Hedera has 1 seat on the technical steering committee. Lehman has a seat. And then the rest of them are sort of up to these companies to try to fill. So Hashgraph has 2, and LimeChain has 2 at the moment. And then there's 3 more that we have to be filled. And these seats are, every 2 years, they're up for re-election, except Lehman, who's got a permanent seat. All the others are up for election every 2 years. And so that's what the technical steering committee is it's basically the technical body that oversees the development of the code. And Hedera is a member of that technical steering committee. And obviously Hedera is critically important to the success of Hiero. I mean, it's actually in the charter. It's like the first thing in the charter. The purpose of Hiero is to, help support and make successful Hedera network, Hedera public network. So it's in our interests as maintainers, as technical steering committee members, as the interest of the project, and also Hedera being part of it, that the stuff that we develop in the open is actually usable on the Hedera network. That being said, there are other ways that we can deploy this code. People could deploy their own private networks or L2s or other sorts of things. They might want to reuse some of the code that we have. There could be other ways that we do some interesting things here. And so, and that's all goodness. And so anybody who's interested in participating in any of these ways can come in and participate as part of Hiero, either by, code contributions or documentation contributions, or even just, if you have a project that you think should be part of it, it could go there. And so now the relationship between, so I mentioned HIPs, and we have Hedera, and we have Hiero. And in the past, the way that this has worked is that if you had a HIP, you would, which is the Hedera improvement proposal, you would go and go to the HIP repo, and you'd create a discussion there, and then create a PR, and it would get reviewed, and it would be taken to TechCom, and TechCom would vote to approve it or not. And if it was approved, then we would do the development work, and we would get it merged into the final product. So that was kind of the path. There are some HIPs that are not approved by the council. Those would be community-led HIPs. Those were sort of separate. But for the ones that were going to affect the consensus node software specifically, or mirror nodes and SDKs, would end up going to the council to get approved. With Hiero, the Hedera improvement proposals are now Hiero improvement proposals. Luckily, it's still an H, so we still call them HIPs. And if you have a HIP and you develop a HIP, it will actually be taken to the technical steering committee for approval. And it will also be taken to TechCom, Hedera's technical committee, to be accepted. Now, the difference is if it goes to the technical steering committee and it's approved, then we can go ahead and develop it as part of Hiero. It doesn't have to be approved by by Hedera in order for us to develop it and include it in Hiero. But Hedera is still responsible for the code that's going to run on the Hedera public network. So it's not like Hiero could twist their arm and say, well, you have to take the code that we've written, too bad. It doesn't work that way. That's their network, Hedera's network, and they can oversee what gets deployed to it. So the acceptance process from TechCom is a way for them to say, this is a HIP that we will allow onto mainnet. And Hiero will work with Hedera in order to make sure that the builds that we produce and the code that we develop is something that can be made to deploy on mainnet. And maybe there will be some HIPs that we implement into Hiero that Hedera does not accept onto mainnet. And in that case, we will have a build time configuration or runtime configuration that will allow them to disable that functionality so that we can still deploy the source code to mainnet. So at the end of the day, this is a partnership between Hedera and the open source development community. We will do our best in Hiero to make sure that we develop code that can be deployed to mainnet. And Hedera will do the best that they can to participate as part of Hiero to make sure that the code that we develop is good. And it's a win-win for everybody.
Gotcha. Thanks for walking through that. So it's kind of like TechCom is or like the TSC is kind of like the new TechCom for Hiero. And so from what I understand, the community can propose HIPs and they'll be reviewed and approved by TechCom, and then Hedera can decide whether or not they accept them. So you covered what happens if Hedera does not want to implement a HIP that the TSC has approved, but what happens if Hedera wants to implement a HIP that the TSC does not approve?
Ooh, yeah, right. So I think that this is it's also accounted for in the design of the system, but it's normal for open source. In some ways, you can think of it as like Linux kernel and Linux distributions. In a sense, Hedera is a distribution of Hiero in the same way that Red Hat Enterprise Linux is a distribution of the Linux kernel. Now, the Linux kernel isn't just the kernel. I mean, there's the kernel, and there's a whole bunch of kernel modules. And you can compile a kernel because it's a microkernel. So you can compile it with different modules enabled or disabled. And so if you had your own kernel module, you can write your own kernel module. You can take the open source stuff from Linux, the normal Linux kernel. You can include your own module. You could compile it and you could deliver that. And that's a perfectly valid way that this can be done. If there were a case where Hedera said, hey, we would like to have this HIP implemented, but the Hiero Technical Steering Committee was like, yeah, that's just never going to happen. Then, which, by the way, I cannot see happening. For my foreseeable future, the way that it would be is it would be yet another option that's included in Hiero, and some people who don't want it can disable it, and some people who do enable it. That's by far the most likely scenario. But if we're looking at like sort of doomsday, then Hedera can always just take the open source code, add its own functionality into that build, do their own build and deploy it into Hedera, and that works perfectly fine. Exactly the same way that Red Hat Enterprise Linux or Ubuntu or Oracle Enterprise Linux or any of these other guys are able to take common open source code, do some modifications for their deployment, and then deploy it.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's not going to be a separate HIP process for Hedera versus Hiero.
No, they will just, the same HIPs that come to Hiero will go to the TechCom so that TechCom can accept it. They will publish their own list of which HIPs they've accepted for mainnet.
Okay, amazing. And I know that with the Linux Foundation, in order for your contributions to count, you need the developer certificate of origin. I think that's new to the community. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So in fact, this is the reason that most of our repos are still in the Hashgraph GitHub org, and we haven't moved them to the Hiero GitHub org yet, is because we have some work to do on cleaning up the DCO, or Developer Certificate of Origin. So I'm going to tell a short story first before I describe it. Way back, in fact, I wish I had the piece of paper out here. Way back when I first joined Sun Microsystems, we had this project that was called JDNC, and it was an open source project people could contribute to. And the fundamental challenge that you have whenever you accept open contributions is, did the person who contributed the code have the legal right to contribute that code? Because the last thing that you want is for some random person on the internet to give you some code that you include in your product, and then somebody else comes and sues you because you're now infringing on their copyright or on their patents or trademarks and so forth. So every open source project has always had to deal with this problem of, what do we do when this random code shows up? Do we trust this code? There's generally two solutions to this problem that people use. The first one is called a contributor agreement, a contributor license agreement, CLA. And the way that it works is that you basically have some blanket document that you sign, and you say, everything I contribute to this project, I have the right to contribute. And if anybody sues, they have to sue me. They can't sue you. So you're basically taking liability for anything that you contribute to the project. That's common. Some places still do that. This is what we did way back in the day at Sun Microsystems. But back then, they had to send me a fax. They filled the thing out and signed it, and then they would fax it, and I'd have to go down the hall. And I'd get this paper. I'd be like, I have no idea what to do with this paper. I still have some of them. I still don't know what to do with this paper. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? So there's a new method that's used and preferred by many projects, including by the Linux Foundation's Decentralized Trust Group, which is called DCO. And the way DCO works is that on each commit, you sign off on the commit. Signed off by rbear23 at GitHub, no reply users.com, or whatever the heck it is. You'll find mine on there, right? They're signed off by me. So everybody has to sign off. And if it's not signed off, you can establish rules that forbid that change from being merged. Now, unfortunately, not all of our repos had that enabled originally. And so consequently, there's some gaps in our history where there's some change sets that don't have the DCO sign off. So if you're listening, and if we try to contact you, please respond and let us know if you are okay with your change set. Otherwise, we'll have to clean up some of the history and replace some change sets with new implementations or something that we know would be good and safe. So it would certainly help the community if we could get help on getting some of those things signed off. Now, going forward, it means that every change going into Hiero does need DCO sign off. And there's one other thing that we need, which are GPG keys. If you are in GitHub, set up the GPG key, because the two things together assert who you are. Technically, anybody could just put, signed off by President of the United States, and we'd be like, woo, DCO, signed off. That's great. But that doesn't mean that you're the President of the United States. If you're going to be, so we need a combination of that DCO sign off and the GPG key. That way we can verify who was the person who signed it off. So they'll self-assert, I signed it off, and they'll be able to say, here was my key, so I know who signed it off. And that, does that raise the barrier for contributions? Yes, it definitely does. Is it necessary? Absolutely. Because if you don't do that, then whatever the legal entity, in this case, Linux Foundation, is not going to accept your changes, because all the other entities that want to use your code will not be able to use it. I mean, imagine that somebody contributes random code. You put that random code into your software project. That software project gets picked up by all the Fortune 500. They're all using his software project. And then the troll comes along and sues every last one of them because they've infringed on their copyright or patents. That's what happens otherwise, which is why if you want open source code to be adopted by people, you generally need to have a solution for this. Either it's a contributor license agreement or it's DCO. And we're using the DCO.
Gotcha. And the GPG key, is that some sort of KYC?
No, it's not a KYC. It could be completely random, but is associated with your GitHub account. So if you say that you signed this off with your GitHub account, then we can look at, then it would require that your GitHub account be have the key on it, but it can be random, whatever you want.
Right. So you still can have anonymous contributors.
Yes.
Okay.
Still anonymous, but we have a trail that says, well, we got it from that person.
Awesome. Thank you.
That person being that GitHub account. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Is there anything else you would like to add about this transition?
I think the main thing would be, first off, really pleased with the response in the community. A lot of people are really excited about it. I'm really grateful for that. Also, the second thing is we're trying to earn that trust that we've sort of been given in advance to make sure that we do this the right way, and also that we are being open and honest and available. But it is a journey. It's like not everything that I want to do as part of an open source project is going to be done in the first day. And anyway, I'm only one of 9 voices on the TSC. But all the things that we want to do, it's going to take some time. Like I wish that we already had the votes going for the remaining 3 seats. It's very high on our priority list. I wish that we had all of the repos already part of the, moved over. I wish that we had all the DCO stuff cleaned up. There's a lot of things that we're working on, and so we're doing the best that we can to try to earn that trust. Also, I'm going to be going to the Linux Foundation, has a bunch of different meetings. They have a maintainers meeting next week that we'll be at. We're really doing a lot in terms of outreach to other people inside Linux Foundation, and let them know that we're here and what we do.
Amazing. If the community wants to get involved and start contributing, where can they start?
So there is on our website, hiero.org, this month is a great month for that question, because there is a Hacktoberfest.
Which Samson will cover all about Hacktoberfest.
Okay, so transition to Samson, but this will be a great way to get involved. Also, the meetings on the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trusts calendar will let you join in and listen in on the TSC meetings or on the other community calls that we do.
Amazing. Exciting times. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing all this information. And yeah, this is very exciting. And we're definitely trying to make it very easy for contributors to participate in Hiero. And I think also, Richard, as part of the migration, I think the team has also been tagging good first issues in all of the repos, which I'll let Samson talk about, because I think that was the base for Hacktoberfest. So Samson, I'll give you the stage, and please introduce yourself and tell us about the good first issues and how to get started contributing to Hacktoberfest. Oh, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Your mic was working when we did the AV check, and now you're muted. Can you guys hear him in the comments? Nope.
Nope.
Do you want to try and rejoin the call, Samson?
Is it good now?
Yeah, it's good. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. That's what happens when your headphones keep changing audio on multiple devices. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So my name is Samson Goddy. I am the open source program manager at Hedera. So basically, what that means is that I am going to be doing a whole lot of community development, ranging from developers relations down to hackathons, all centered around Hiero, which is obviously what Richard already explained. So, and of course, trying to reduce the barrier of like getting people into contributing to Hiero, whether you're technical or non-technical. I think those are kind of the center of my role, and I'm really, really excited about it because my previous job, I've been doing open source for over 10 years. So really excited, to come in here and expand that experience, but also learn also from the community, which is super excited. So speaking about the spirit of contribution, so October has always been an important month in the open source community. The reason is because Hacktoberfest is designed, 30 days, beginning of October down to the end of October, for a way for both open source projects to be celebrated, but also for individuals to see the opportunity to contribute to a project that they care about. In this case, Hiero. But then prior to when we joined the Linux Foundation, one of the goals was to, not just tell people that, hey, you can now come and contribute, but also do a lot of, program outreach that enable people to see us, as a welcoming community. And of course, what are the best way to do that if not to join, Hacktoberfest? So like I said, Hacktoberfest is a 30 days long event. So that means from online down to offline. So there are a couple events that may or may not be happening in your city, which is basically getting started in open source, how to use GitHub 101, or how to, contribute to project. In fact, we're going to be having a local meetup, I think somewhere in Germany, 16th, hosted by Hendrik, one of the TSE member. So if you're around Germany, so you should definitely check that out. But of course, if you're not in Germany, if you're like me, that is, always traveling around the world, you can always do that online. So what that means is, as of today, just like what Richard mentioned, the code is currently not on Hiero. So if you go to Hiero GitHub repo right now, you would see just, the website and then some other README. But of course, you can still currently contribute to the Hashgraph Hedera GitHub repo, which I will show you in a minute. So the goal here is basically enabling you to, come in, filter, issues based on, what you want to contribute. And of course, Mika did mention good first issue. So good first issue is basically a way for us to tell contributors that, oh, this issue that you're looking at is really, really designed for someone with almost no experience on the project to kind of get started. So, basically what that means is that the wonderful engineers at Hedera and Hashgraph have, put in thoughts to explain what it is for you to make your first contribution. So basically what that means is that, if you have experience in Java, Go, JavaScript, Python, or, even some non-code contributions, they go that extra step to make things a little bit more simpler for you to get started. And that's why it's called good first issue. But then there's a second level of labeling, especially for Hacktoberfest, called the Hacktoberfest tag, which is interesting. So you have good first issue, which is always going to be around. And then, of course, we have the Hacktoberfest tag, which you mostly see around the month of October. So what that means is that as of today, if you go to each repositories in our GitHub organization right now, you should be finding each issue with a tag good first issue, or in this case, Hacktoberfest. So that kind of gives you room to send in your contributions and send in things. So quickly, I can just do a quick demo what that looks like. Hopefully, the god of demos allow me to share my screen well. I think that should be good. So cool. So the easiest way to do it, I don't know if you all can see my screen. Can everybody see my screen? I think, okay, this should be fine. Yeah, so the easiest way to do it today is if you go to hiero.org/Hacktoberfest, which is this link, you're going to get greeted by this interesting, websites that we're currently developing. And of course, there's like list of instructions. One, what is Hiero, why it's important to contribute, and of course, the reasons why you want to contribute. And of course, any key, any way to do contributing to your first open source project is always to learn and grow. I remember when I made my first contributions about 15 years ago, and that has been very instrumental in my career, and of course doing open source. So those are kind of the things that individual contributors like yourself can leverage. But of course, you also have the ability for you to get to contribute to the project that you care about. So there are a lot of instructions on how to go and find them. Like I said, you can go find an issue. You can browse the list on what it means for you to do the Hacktoberfest label list. And of course, you can, in order for you to make that contribution, you always have to fork a repo. So basically what that means is that you're taking that into your own GitHub workplace, and then you can now make your changes and then send them back to, in this case, the Hashgraph repo, and of course, submit your first pull request, which is super interesting. And of course, we've gone through the length of adding those repos, those issues. So these are currently issues. If you can see here, there are some that are labeled either TypeScript or Java. So if you're a Java champion or someone that is trying to find your way to, improve your experience in Java, so these are kind of the ways that you can do that, right? And then quickly, if I can go to another tab here, which is going to be on GitHub shortly. So here we have, basically, this is my master list. This is kind of what we have right now that are both tag Hacktoberfest. So if you can see here, you can see currently there are roughly about 33 results. So basically 33 issues that are currently open for contributions. So for example, let's say you want to contribute to a project. So the first thing you have to do here is obviously clicking, the first issue. So if you see here, I have this issue 408, which is quite interesting. And the reason why it's good first issue is because we've gone through the length of explaining what that means, from a first timer point of view, to even going and describing what that issue is, to give you more context to what you need to do. But of course, there are also kind of a step-by-step guide on how to contribute. Remember, you want to make sure that your code get merged and also get accepted by, Hiero and also the Linux Foundation, just like what Richard mentioned. So of course, you're going to be signing off your code, and of course doing some couple steps. Again, we've gone through that lens to give you those step-by-step guide, which is super cool. And of course, you can go in down, and in order for you to start working on an issue, you could start by saying, oh, I want to work on this issue, for example, and then you can submit comments. And then someone like myself or Hendrik or Richard or any of the maintainer can come in here and, assign you to that project. So basically what that means is that you're going to be assigned. So what does that mean for you to be assigned? I can come in here and show you a wonderful contributor that I think currently has some issues that are assigned. So we have a GitHub user called Blue. I think she's currently somewhere in Africa trying to contribute into the project. So if you see here, she came in here and saying, hey, I'm interested in working on an issue. And then I came in and said, hey, okay, you got it. And then I obviously assigned Blue. So Blue went, ahead to go in and work on those issues, and of course, submitting those issues. So for example, here is a current issue that has a pull request, right? Which is good. So if you see here, a user went ahead to pick up an issue, but also to send in a pull request to the Hedera service itself, which is super cool. So these are kind of the things that you're going to be experiencing. But of course, if you're confused and you want to interact with us real time, of course, you can do that on Discord. But in order for you to also make it a little bit more easier for everyone to see, especially on GitHub, you can go to the github.com.org/lfdt.hiero/discussion. So of course, that's a little bit mouthful. You can always come into the site and click on the GitHub discussion. But of course, there are, again, part of one of the things that get me excited about doing open source and even being part of the Hedera community is seeing how community members not just come in and try their first ever open source project, or in this case, coming to contribute to their first ever, project on Hedera, but also to come and talk about how that feels, So right now we have a user on Twitter. This is a random Twitter page, giving a shout out to, the Hiero project, talking about how they made their first ever, in this case, open source project. So I think this is kind of the things that we're looking forward to see, and we're really
to share, Samson. Sorry to cut you off, but were you?
Oh yeah, we share my screen. Yeah, that's interesting. Let me find that again. Cool. So this is Twitter. Great. Okay, this is what I was just talking about. Yeah. So like I said, this is the user. They made their first pull request merged. And then they went over to Twitter and I believe also LinkedIn to talk about the experience. And that's one of the cool things. So if you're contributing for the first time, your pull requests get merged. You're sending your pull request. Please always try to give us a shout out. Or of course, one of the things I would like to be seeing more is you writing about your experience and how you contributed, and then that's going to obviously inspire someone else to send in your first pull request. And I think this is really, really not just the spirit of open source, but also the spirit of having a really great community, which is something that is very, very critical to the success of Hiero. So I think that's basically it, except anyone has any question for me. But yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Samson. Yeah, and it's so great to see the community already getting involved and successfully having their PRs merged. That is definitely super exciting for everybody. So we're looking forward to seeing more of those contributions. And we actually do have a question, but I think this one is for Richard. So the question is, how can I get the meeting link? I have been looking out for it. So I think they're talking about the Hiero community calls meeting links.
Yeah. So I know that this was sent out. Hold on a second. I don't have a good way to paste it. That's my problem. But if you do a search for LFDT calendar, you should be able to come across it. But if I get a good one, I'll send it to you, Mika, and you can send that out.
Sure. Is it on the Hiero website?
I don't think that we have it there. LFDT has their own calendar. Samson, do you know if it's on the Hiero website? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I'm checking right now to see if I can get a link. Oh, I do. I think there's a, let's see. So this is an example of it.
There we go.
I will be posting the link in the video description for YouTube here, so you can access it later. So, okay.
That's the link.
Samson, are we waiting for you to confirm if the link is live on the Hiero website?
Oh no, it's not live on the Hiero website right now.
I sent you the link, Mika, so you can redistribute it. But it's let's see. I did a Google search. I ended up on the LFDT website, and in their sitemap they have events, and under there is meeting calendar. And if you get on there, it's just a calendar. You can subscribe to it, and they actually have all of their, like, there's Hyperledger and Bezu and a bunch of others, but one of the calendars that they have in there is for Hiero, and so our meetings are on that.
Amazing. Thank you for answering this question. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Samson, for talking to us about Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest will end at the end of October, but you didn't even talk about the rewards.
Sorry. I'm so really focused on making sure someone make your first contribution. But yeah, so in terms of reward, Hacktoberfest as a program itself, it's a separate organization that is running for the good spirit of open source. But when you make up to 4 pull requests, you get sent a swag, which is pretty cool. So basically what that means is, I can just share my screen one last time. Thank you for listing that out. So if I go to the Hiero site right now and I go to Hacktoberfest, so first, basically what that means is you're going to get greeted to the screen. So I would recommend you go to the site first. All the instructions are on the Hiero page. So you come in here and you click Start Hacking. And of course, when you click Start Hacking, there's going to be an option for you to sign up with GitHub or with GitLab. And so basically what that means is that you would have to, you have to have up to 4 pull requests get merged. And then when that happens, you're going to get some amazing swag from the Hacktoberfest community. But of course, we also, on our own end, we're also like going to be sending really cool things at the end of October for folks that ended up submitting pull requests. So please watch out.
Yeah, thank you. So the contributors will be getting swag. That's exciting. Was there something about planting a tree as well that I read somewhere?
Yes. It's also being managed by the Hacktoberfest community. So you have the option of receiving swag, also planting a tree, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
We love it. Amazing. Thank you for walking us through that. So yeah, you can get rewarded for contributing to Hiero through Hacktoberfest, which will end at the end of October. And then once October ends, we will be going live with a new incentive program for Hiero, more generally for devs who would like to contribute to the Hedera code base. This will be with Thrive. And so I'm going to invite Matt onto the stage to talk to us about Thrive. So Matt, welcome.
Hello. Hey, Mika. So happy to be here. And listen, I just want to first off say that Samson modeled his home after my home. So, I had the home first. Samson saw it. He was super jealous. And he was like, I need a home exactly like that. So it's like when you go to a party and like your buddy is wearing the same like sweater as you. And it's like, wait a minute, I had it first. So I just, the public needs to know. But thanks for inviting me here. Yeah, I'd love to talk about Thrive and what we're doing. And maybe a good place to start, because where you just asked me, which is a Thrive development incentive program in November. And I know that there's still a bit of a process here and like, getting it, putting it in place. But it's an upcoming, we'll integrate our system in with GitHub, and basically so as things will be tackled in GitHub, they can get rewarded through our Thrive system. So I think that probably leads me to what is Thrive. So Thrive, so our mission at Thrive is to maximize value creation for all people and all communities. And that's like a bit of a mouthful, but there's like a couple components to that. And one thing is we partner with amazing ecosystems like Hedera to help them run grants programs and bounties programs. We call them contributions. I think you guys use the same language of contributions, but grants and bounties is kind of what people tend to know in the space. But help them run these programs because it's really hard to do. And sometimes they even sort of forget to appreciate that. But if you're a big community with a treasury, what you need to do is you need to allocate your funds from that treasury in an efficient way to build your ecosystem, right? You're using your treasury funds to build a community, to build the technology, and doing that in an efficient way is super hard. So that's where we come in. We make the process really efficient so that funds are only distributed to contributions or contributors or devs that are actually creating value for the ecosystem itself. So that we can make sure that the treasury spend is, making the biggest impact possible for the Hedera ecosystem. And we do that through our technology. We have an app, which I'll show you in a little bit, and our systems, of course. But also we have a decentralized badged, community badged reviewer network that is verifying that value is taking place. So say you are a contributor, you go to our app, I'll show you in a minute, but you go to our app, you see, oh, look at all these cool contributions that I can tackle. You complete it, you submit it. And then what happens is our reviewer network takes a look at it, makes sure that you did what you said you would do, and then it goes into a queue for you to be rewarded. And we do that for different levels of complexity too. So if it's a simple contribution, almost like a content contribution, it's make a walkthrough video of this cool Hedera app, show people how to do it. Well, that's kind of an easy thing to do. You get, as a reviewer, you click on, maybe it was sent out through Twitter. You click on the Twitter link that they provide. You watch the walkthrough video. Maybe it's 3 minutes long, and you're like, yep, they did a good job with this. We recommend that it gets rewarded. So simpler things like that, to more complicated things like milestones for grantees. So say there's a grants program, and the rewards are thousands of dollars to build this technology using Hedera. Then we have a reviewer network who can do that, who are developers, who can understand code, who can take the proof of that milestone, see the submitted proof for that milestone, verify it, and either thumbs up or thumbs down. So that's kind of what sets us apart is our technology and our reviewer network, who can really just make sure that that treasuries or ecosystems are only spending money on things that are that are valuable. And what that really leads to is you're not spending funds on spam, or you're not spending on simple attacks, or projects that aren't contributing value. So that's the thing I guess that's the way to describe Thrive. And currently, we have a partnership with Hedera. It's called Thrive Hedera, where there's a 6 million HBAR incentive for people to participate in the Hedera ecosystem. And I'll show you where to go so the people who are watching can see it. But it is incentivizing builders, creators, DeFi fans, etc., to do things like learn about innovative Hedera applications or create content around different apps in the Hedera ecosystem. And then come November, it'll be a lot more developer-based contributions where folks can contribute and do a pull request on GitHub. Our viewers will take a look at it, thumbs up it, and they would get rewarded for contributing that way. So I think that brings us up to now. Did I miss anything, Nika?
No, yeah, that is very perfect. Yeah, so like Matt said, so after Hacktoberfest, as Samson mentioned, we've tagged the good first issues, and then the plan is to get those good first issues on Thrive so that contributors can now get rewarded. We do have a HBAR prize pool for this, and we're talking about adding different levels of complexities for these issues and different rewards based on the complexities. So yes, that's definitely something to look forward to. But yeah, thank you for walking us through that, Matt. And I think now you want to walk us through what's actually live right now and what the community can participate in on Thrive.
For sure. And actually, you just reminded me of something too, which is there is different pathways too, depending on your skill level or whatever. If you're a beginner, there'll be some easier contributions that you could do and rewarded proportionate to that. Or if you're more skilled or been doing more development and open source code for a longer period of time, some more challenging contributions that you can tackle too. So it's really for a suite of competency levels, I would say. So okay. Next is the app. So if you wouldn't mind sharing my screen, but so this right now is this is what you find when you go to thrivehedera.com. And what happens is you hook up your wallet. Right now I've got a Hashpack wallet hooked up, but we actually spent some time over the last few weeks, maybe even longer than that, 4 or 5 weeks, getting a Wallet Connect integration that works for our app. So all sorts of Hedera wallets work on our app. So you'd hook up your Hedera wallet, but it's a Wallet Connect solution that will work in dApps across the Web3 ecosystem too, as well. There's some integration stuff I think that needs to go on the app end, but regardless, this is a fun project that we worked on with I think it was with the Hashgraph folks and the Thrive Hedera board in order to get this completed. But anyway, so you can hook up your Hedera wallet to at thrivehedera.com to our app, and once you do, what you see is a list of contributions that are currently live. And there's all different types of contributions. A lot of them are content ones right now, but as I mentioned, come November, so in a couple of weeks, you're going to see a lot more development-oriented ones. And how you participate is you just choose one that speaks to you. So like here's a contribute to the Hedera Scribes program by writing a Twitter thread, etc. And all you do is you just go through the instructions, read through them, the submission instructions, you take action. In this case, it's you write a thread, so you would want to go to Twitter and put that thread in place. And then once you do it, once you're done, you just click the submit contribution button. You drop in your Twitter thread address right here. I didn't grab a thread, but I'm not going to put it in there because then some reviewer is going to be like, what is this? This is not even an actual thing, an actual claim. So I won't waste their time. But once you get it in there, you'll be able to hit confirm contribution. And then our reviewer network would take a look at it. And the rewards would be, as long as there's a thumbs up on the content that you did what you said you were going to do, then you would get automatically rewarded. And usually that comes in over the course of like a couple of weeks or something, but you would just watch out. There's notifications through the app that'll tell you, but you can also just like, if you go into your profile, you can see like your contributions, what's been in progress, that's been submitted, that's been completed, et cetera, how much HBAR you've earned. So that's how the Thrive app works.
Amazing, super exciting. So what is the website? Can you give us the URL so people can navigate to it?
Yep, it's just thrivehedera.com. And I would also just encourage everybody to follow at Thrive Hedera on Twitter too. That's our partnership Twitter handle. And Thrive Hedera, the website's linked there. And every time there's a new contribution, we put it out through that Twitter handle. We do Twitter Spaces, talking about new issues through that handle as well. So that's probably the best way to keep in touch. But thrivehedera.com is the app.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt.
My pleasure.
I have a question from the community for you. Will Thrive participation have tax deductible benefits?
Listen, I'm not an accountant. I would tell you to switch your account. I don't know what jurisdiction you're in. I don't understand. Where are you in the world? Are you in the United States? Are you in Europe? Are you in Africa? Where are you? I think it depends in jurisdiction, the jurisdiction. So I wish I could answer you, Stan, but I just don't know. I'd probably get sued if I answered.
Good, politically correct answer.
Right.
Amazing. Okay, wow. Well, I think this wraps up the call for this month. This has been a very fruitful call with lots of calls to action on Hiero, on Hacktoberfest, and for Thrive as well. And I'd just like to thank all the speakers who came up today to share some knowledge and news with us. And thank you to the community for always being here. And we will see you next month for the next community call. And take care until then. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.